You won't see these pistols in your local gun shop's display case. They're not being hyped on flashy ads, and no one's upselling them behind the counter. So why do they keep showing up at the range, being passed around like secret handshakes among folks who know their stuff? In this video, we'll talk about 6 pistols that you simply can't buy new in stores anymore, but somehow nearly every range regular has at least one tucked away. From Cold War sidearms like the Soviet Tokarev TT-33 to once ubiquitous duty pistols like the Ruger P89, we're looking at old-school pistols that still hit like a hammer. You'll also hear about the outlaw charm of polymer 80 builds and why everyone's favorite all-metal Beretta might just be the one with the mag release in the wrong place. These aren't museum pieces collecting dust. They're workhorses still doing laps on the firing line. Whether you're a collector, a range rat, or just someone who likes their guns with a bit of history and grit, stick around. You might just rediscover a pistol you didn't even know you needed. Let's kick things off with the Ruger P89, which isn't something you'll see behind a gun shop counter very often but still shows up at shooting ranges. Ruger stopped making it in the mid-2000s, and polymer-framed pistols eventually took over the market. Some folks never forgot how solid the P89 is, though. Ruger developed it from the older P85 design, which arrived too late for the XM9 trials, but performed well during later testing. The P89 ended up impressing plenty of shooters who valued ruggedness over flash. It might seem heavy and blocky compared to polymer guns, but that heft absorbs recoil. The slide and frame use investment casting, which helped Ruger keep costs down while still producing a durable sidearm. Most shooters agree it has a straightforward DA/SA trigger, decent sights, and a reliable action that digests a variety of ammo types without a fuss. It isn't fancy, and it's a bit too chunky for most concealed carry preferences, but at the range it's right at home, delivering consistent performance. Prices on used P89s usually hover around $300 to $400 depending on condition, so it's still possible to get one without draining your wallet. That affordability attracts those who appreciate old-school steel over polymer. Anyone who's put rounds through a P89 will likely mention how it keeps chugging along with minimal upkeep. It might not win style points, but it handles real-world abuse. There was a time when these pistols were everywhere, especially among shooters who wanted a solid 9mm at a bargain. Although it disappeared from gun shops long ago, it remains a faithful companion for many enthusiasts. Modern alternatives might weigh less and have more ergonomic designs. Yet the P89's reputation for toughness continues to earn it a spot on the firing line. Folks who keep one around know that if they ever grab this pistol for a range trip or a defensive scenario, they can count on its no-nonsense approach to getting the job done. The Tokarev TT-33 has roots in the 1930s Soviet military design and remains a favorite among those who love vintage guns. It's chambered in 7.62 by 25mm Tokarev, which is famous for high velocity and flat shooting. This pistol hasn't been available new in U.S. stores for decades, but it shows up at ranges thanks to war bringbacks and surplus sales from places like Romania, Yugoslavia, and China. Most imports come with a safety that wasn't part of the original design, since U.S. regulations require that feature for import. Collectors grab these pistols for their historic significance, while range-goers appreciate that snappy, accurate cartridge. The Tokarev shares some design features with both the Colt 1911 and the Mauser C96, yet it follows its own path by using a removable fire control unit and a simple blowback-style takedown. It offers a surprisingly pleasant shooting experience, even though its ergonomics can feel dated. The grip is narrow, the magazine holds 8 rounds, and the original design had no manual safety. Many shooters keep it in Condition 3 if they plan to carry it anywhere. Surplus ammo is out there, but a lot of it is corrosive, so shooters who pick these up learn to clean them thoroughly. Prices range from around $200 to $300 for well-used Romanian or Yugoslavian variants, though original Soviet TT-33s can climb above $600 if in nice shape. That's still relatively affordable, considering its place in firearms history. Anyone who brings a Tokarev to the range ends up fielding questions from curious onlookers who can't believe such an old-school pistol still performs so well. Some of these guns bear combat scars, and each has a story to tell. That Cold War mystique and lively 7.62 by 25mm cartridge keep the Tokarev relevant long after it vanished from store shelves. People who own one know it's not a modern polymer pistol, but it delivers a memorable experience every time it barks and sends brass flying. Norinco 1911S vanished from American gun stores after the early 1990s, when import bans cut off the steady flow of Chinese-made firearms. Before that, these pistols were everywhere, typically sold at budget-friendly prices. They're copies of the classic USM 1911A1 design, with frames and slides famously hardened to levels beyond what Colt was doing at the time. Custom builders liked that strong steel, turning Norinco pistols into reliable race guns with upgraded triggers, sights, and barrels. Even in their factory form, Norincos could handle plenty of punishment. The triggers smoothed out over time, and the basic GI-style parts worked well enough for a reliable 45 ACP range companion. A few had rough finishes or uneven machining, but the underlying construction was solid. Modern shooters who track one down in decent shape quickly discover that while it might lack showy aesthetics, it shoots the 45 with authority. The biggest downside is difficulty in finding them now that imports have been shut off for decades. Some linger in private sales or pop up occasionally at gun shows, but they're no longer a common sight. Anyone who does snag one can expect to pay roughly $400 to $600, although that depends heavily on condition. A well-maintained Norinco can run for many years before needing serious work, and the part's compatibility with standard 1911 components is a plus. The pistol's overall heft is typical for an all-steel 1911, so it's not a lightweight option, but it still sees occasional use for casual carry or home defense. Shooters who happen upon a Norinco 1911 sometimes wonder if they've stumbled into a piece of history or a second-rate copy. Those who know the platform realize that when the steel is as sturdy as this, a bit of extra polishing and better springs can transform it into a superb shooter. In a world where polymer pistols dominate, there's still room on the range for an old-school slab of steel that channels the spirit of the original 1911 design. The Beretta 92S isn't sitting in gun shops these days, but it still appears at ranges across the country, most times in the hands of enthusiasts who admire an older generation of Beretta engineering. Created in the late 1970s for the Italian National Police, the 92S introduced a slide-mounted decocker rather than the original frame-mounted safety. Most ended up living out police or military service in Europe before drifting into surplus channels. Collectors and practical shooters alike scooped them up once they reached the U.S. market. The price was typically half that of a brand new 92FS, yet the core design offered similar reliability and shootability. The 92S shares the open slide system that Beretta fans love, which promotes strong cycling and reduces jams. Its all-metal construction adds heft, and the double-action trigger complements the straight-line recoil path that helps muzzle control. The biggest quirk is the heel-style magazine release, located at the rear base of the grip. Reloads can feel slow to modern shooters accustomed to a push-button release near the trigger guard, but it's part of the old European approach. The sights are also small and not as quick to acquire compared to a modern combat pistol. A well-cared-for 92S has a smooth slide action, and owners often note how comfortable it feels when firing 9mm. Surplus supplies have dried up over time, but used models may appear for anywhere between $400 and $600 depending on condition. Magazines remain widely available since current production Beretta mags still have that heel notch, so sourcing extras isn't hard. It's a piece of Beretta heritage that sits on the cusp between old school and modern design. Shooters who appreciate metal frames, classic styling, and that distinct open slide vibe still love taking a 92S to the range. It may not be easy to find brand new, but it's left an impression on those who enjoy a reliable, smooth-shooting 9mm with a bit of European flair. Smith & Wesson's 5906 was once a fixture among American law enforcement agencies, yet it's no longer available new. It's still a popular sight at many ranges, thanks to a sturdy stainless steel frame and a reputation for durability. Introduced in the late 1980s as part of the Smith & Wesson third generation series, the 5906 carried over the double-action, single-action setup of earlier models, but improved ergonomics and reliability. Cops trusted it in an era before polymer became dominant, and plenty of examples were sold as trade-ins when departments switched to lighter pistols. The 5906 is known for soaking up recoil due to its hefty construction, which also gives it a balanced feel. The slide and frame are stainless, making maintenance and rust prevention easier. Some variations have adjustable sights or slightly different trigger setups, but they all share that classic all-metal design. Modern shooters who pick one up mention how stable it feels in hand, with a crisp single-action break and a manageable double-action pull. One drawback is the weight. For everyday concealed carry, it's on the heavier side. The metal frame doesn't mesh with the modern trend of minimal bulk, although it does help keep muzzle flip to a minimum on the firing line. Another quirk is the slide-mounted decocker and safety, which can take some getting used to if you prefer a frame-mounted system. It's not always easy to locate 5906 magazines at local shops, but they're still around online. Used prices vary, usually landing between $350 and $500, depending on condition. A well-maintained police trade-in can last a long time with routine upkeep, so it's a smart buy for those who enjoy the feel of metal-framed guns. Some owners find that the triggers smooth out nicely over time, making the 5906 a fun range companion that can also serve for home defense. It might not be cutting edge, but it's a slice of 1990s law enforcement history that refuses to disappear. Those who shoot it recognize the blend of nostalgia and dependable performance that defines Smith & Wesson's third-generation line. A pistol that resembles a Glock, feels like a Glock, shoots like a Glock, but isn't a Glock and isn't available at any store counter is likely an 80% build, which gun enthusiasts usually refer to as a polymer 80 build. These are built from kits that come as unfinished frames that aren't classified as firearms until completed by the builder, which keeps them off retail shelves. Shooters are drawn to them because they can pick every component, from the grip texture and angle to the slide, barrel, and trigger. The end result can feel even better in hand than a factory Glock, especially if you dislike finger grooves or want a customized stipple job. That freedom has led many hobbyists to jump in, but it also means quality depends on the builder's efforts and the parts selected. Some 80% Glocks run flawlessly from day one, while others encounter issues if tolerances are slightly off. A break-in period might be necessary to get the slide running smoothly, and the trigger reset can feel gritty at first. Not every aftermarket slide matches the frame perfectly, so it's a learning process. Another consideration is the legal status, which varies by state and could change over time. Some states have banned so-called ghost guns, and federal rules may become more restrictive. For folks who can still build them, the process is a unique way to shape a personal handgun. The overall cost ranges from about $400 to $700, depending on the slide, barrel, and extras. The base frame kit is roughly $149, while a slide can start near $180, and a decent barrel might add another $100 to $200. Adding a quality trigger or sights pushes the total higher. Finished builds typically appear on the firing line next to standard factory Glocks, but they stand out in subtle ways. The grip angle might be closer to a 1911, or the slides may have windows and milled cuts. Owners enjoy the feeling of having built something themselves, even though it takes more work than buying a complete pistol. It's not for everyone, but it definitely attracts those who want a do-it-yourself approach that transforms a box of parts into a range-ready handgun. So there you have it, 6 pistols you won't find in stores, but somehow always manage to show up when the brass starts flying. We covered Cold War classics, duty-grade throwbacks, and even a few home-built legends. Whether it was the Tokarev's Bark, the P-89's Brawn, or the Beretta 92S's Old World Charm, one of these probably made you look twice. Would you happen to own any of these off-the-shelf ghosts? Got any stories to tell? Drop it in the comments. Hit like if you learned something new, share this with your range buddies, and don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon for more. Thanks for watching.